up today, Dallas Cowboys fans, Cowboy Nation everywhere? The Dallas Cowboys now continue training camp with pads, and we're going to say the Dallas Cowboys are now in the situation where you're seeing pretty much the rest of the team is starting to flow together on a much more, I guess you want to say, efficient way, because you're now looking at not having guys like CeeDee Lamb out there right now still working out that contract extension situation. Dak Prescott still working on an extension himself, that between his team and the agents, the front office, all that along. But Dak Prescott, the biggest thing I'm going to say for Dak Prescott, from what you're seeing just of camp video and everything going around and what the Cowboys beat writers around the league in general are talking about, you're looking and saying Dak Prescott just looks comfortable out there, looks confident. It's like he has a grasp. He and Mike McCarthy on the same page, Brian Schottenheimer, that whole team, that conglomerate of decision makers for the offense are all on the same page, and Dak Prescott looks very comfortable. The number one thing you're looking at when you're not having a guy like CeeDee Lamb out there is who else is going to step up. The biggest things you're starting to see, especially surrounding that situation, I'm going to say is going to pay major dividends going to the regular season, because it's going to give guys more reps and more opportunities. Is even though we're talking about a veteran, but Brandon Cooks now being that number one guy, I guess you could say in quotations, the number one guy right now with CeeDee Lamb not in the mix right now, you're looking and seeing Brandon Cooks and Dak Prescott, that connection and that chemistry that we started to see, especially in the second half of last regular season, it's continuing to improve, and I'm going to say that's going to be huge going forward. Also, Jalen Tolbert today had a nice end zone, I guess you want to say, one of those plays you got to come very accustomed to from Dak Prescott. Once he's more comfortable now, especially talking about returning from that injury a few years ago, it took about a year and a half, a season and a half for him to get comfortable using his legs a little bit more. So now you see Dak Prescott get outside the pocket and find a guy like Jalen Tolbert in the back of the end zone. That connection itself, again, a guy I'm looking at for the future and saying if Jalen Tolbert can continue on the path and the trajectory that he is, he's going to be that guy that we're looking at possibly to be opposite of a CeeDee Lamb, all barring any unforeseen thing that having CeeDee Lamb still in the fold for this franchise going forward in years to come. Jalen Tolbert is a guy I'm going to say the Cowboys can hang their hat on, because I feel like he just has the athleticism and he has the skill set. We're talking about the guy, when I'm going to say Jalen Tolbert, he's gotten better as a route runner and overall, and a guy that trusts his hands. And Dak Prescott, when you have that same page, that connection and that chemistry, again, just knowing where to be and where he likes to be, and where, especially Dak knowing that where he knows Jalen Tolbert likes to catch the ball, that chemistry and that connection is going to be something to keep an eye on going forward. Again, another day where you're watching and seeing a guy like Jake Ferguson is going to be something is very interesting, because you're watching Jake Ferguson, and I'm going to say we can kind of get into the mix. Who do you think is the number one priority? We're talking about obviously in the offense and the passing game. CeeDee Lamb is number one, the de facto number one. We're looking at saying that's where your offense is going to start in the passing game. But then Jake Ferguson, to me personally, I believe he's right behind CeeDee Lamb in the fold of importance to the passing offense. Jake Ferguson, you start to see a little bit of more of the screen game, and I'm going to say Jake Ferguson, the biggest thing that he became, I guess you want to say, very what brought more just success to this offense in the second half of last regular season is you start to see that yards after catch, whether it's a screen game, whether it's just working him over the middle of the field, the seams. You're seeing that being used a little bit more in camp now, especially being with pads. And the number one thing you're also going to say when it comes to the offense is you're going to have to obviously work your way in. The offense like usually starts in slow. You're starting to work in some of the new guys, and then you pick up and add in more offense as the training camp process and the preseason and the regular season go. You start to add more and more. So we're going to continue to see guys find more opportunity. And a guy like Luke Schoonmaker, this is going to be something I'm going to say Luke Schoonmaker is now going to be in the fold, because at the same time, obviously that's a second round pick going into year 2. The Cowboys are still going to be able to have to flip every single turn every stone, dot all I's, cross all T's, and just make sure that you've gotten everything out of Luke Schoonmaker that you possibly can. And what you saw a little bit more, even so today, is a guy like Luke Schoonmaker being used a little bit more over the seams, and that's been over the last couple of days. So it's going to be big to see what Luke Schoonmaker can continue to add to this offense. And then when you're adding in just some of those other key pieces I'm talking about, another guy, Kevontae Turpin, he's going to be a weapon for this offense. I'm not saying he's your number 3, number 4. I just feel like Mike McCarthy and Brian Schottenheimer in general, especially Dak Prescott having his voice being heard even more so, especially talking about being now looked at as more of an MVP caliber type quarterback in this league. Now you're going to be able to see a guy like Kevontae KaVontae Turpin is going to be one of those X factor games on any given Sunday. I'm going to say, obviously, KaVontae Turpin, we know what he can be in the return game, punt returner, kick return. But when you're talking about a guy just having some special skill set, that if you find the perfect mismatch, I guess you want to say, KaVontae Turpin is going to be a key X factor for this team again in the passing offense. So there's just a lot to kind of work for. And I'm talking about Tyron Billy Johnson. That's another guy that hasn't really been talked about a little bit. Kind of one of those under the radar guys. This is a guy that's starting to make a name for himself. We already talked about Jalen Brooks a little bit. We already talked about just some of the other guys that kind of have been thrown in the mix a little bit, their names in the hat. But a guy like Tyron Billy Johnson, that's a guy the Cowboys are going to have to ask themselves some questions. Because again, when training camp starts to come around, you're going to say, who exactly are these key guys, I guess you're going to say, when the preseason rolls around? We know the way that the preseason is formatted now. You're looking and saying who are going to be some of these guys that are going to be getting a little bit more burn and a little more opportunity. And that's going to be a guy I think you want to keep your eye on. Also, Jalen Marino Cropper, a guy coming out of Fresno State, I believe. This is now his second year. You're looking and saying him, is he going to be one of those guys where you're saying, is he a slot? Is he going to be an outside receiver? I don't think that you're really going to have to figure out that in that, because when you're talking about the Cowboys offense, a lot of these positions are now interchangeable. We see CeeDee Lamb a lot anyway. He's moved on the outside. He's used on the inside. You see Brandon Cooks kind of in that same mix. Jalen Tolbert you've seen him on the outside sometimes. You see him on the inside. So I feel like the Cowboys receiving game and the way you see Mike McCarthy going back to his Packers days, when he opens this offense up, a lot of these guys are going to be interchangeable. So it's going to be very interesting to see who exactly is going to stand out. But again, there are just lots of weapons I feel like the Cowboys are going to be able to play around with in this upcoming season. And to me, that's very exciting. Another player to keep an eye on going forward is going to be Hunter Lepke. We already know out of North Dakota State, he was kind of that I guess you want to say Swiss Army knife type player that I believed he could have been last season with a little bit more opportunity. And when he got his touches, it was kind of up and down just because, again, a lack of opportunity overall. But a guy like Hunter Lepke, you saw him get the ball in the passing game a few times, especially from Dak Prescott. So I'm going to say, if you're going back to just the way that Mike McCarthy in his Packers days as the coach, the head coach of the Green Bay Packers and the play caller, priority, the main play caller in Green Bay, you see the way that Mike McCarthy likes to use some of these Swiss Army knives, these bigger fullback, halfback, hybrid type players, and I feel like Hunter Lepke could fall right into that same exact mix. So this is going to be also just a player I feel like the Cowboys can, if they can find him and put him in the right positions, we're going to be able to use that a little bit. I'm going to say also, don't be surprised if you can see him using the goal line a little bit, because I feel like now with Ezekiel Elliott back in that fold, Rico Dowdle being the hard-nosed runner that he is, you're now going to ask yourself who exactly is going to get those goal line touches. And I feel like you can never have too many bodies that in defense, especially down there when he gets inside the red zone, have to worry about. So if you're talking about what Ezekiel Elliott can bring, Rico Dowdle can bring down there also, and talking about what Hunter Lepke could potentially bring, even in the passing game, we're talking about some quick screens. We're talking about just slipping them out there in the flats and sometimes finding your way in the end zone that way. We'll see. But again, just Hunter Lepke, if he's going to be able to be at least somewhat, I guess you want to say, a contributing member of this offense, that's going to be a little bit more for the Cowboys to be able to open up with. So it's going to be that's something just to keep an eye on. And also, we're talking about, obviously, during training camp, the number one thing you're also waiting to see is always how intense it's going to be. And the first thing you're going to see is two rookies. I believe rookie Kalen Carson, the cornerback, I believe 5th round pick this year or something like that, somewhere around there, 5th round pick. And then you're talking about a guy, you wouldn't have 4th round pick, but 5th round pick, Kalen Carson. And then you're talking about, I believe, undrafted free agent rookie, Brevin Spanford. They got a little physical. You see, I guess Spanford he's blocking until the last minute, which you can never complain about, because especially at the tight end position, you need guys that are going to be just dogs, that are going to be hustlers, because you have that in a Jake Ferguson. So you want to see the rest of the guys around that kind of take on that mentality. And he's blocking Kalen Carson, which Kalen Carson felt was a little too late after the play, and then they start to tussle a little bit. So to me, you can't have too much of that. Now, you don't want to say, you don't want the guys, again, to just be fighting every single play, but you do want to see that intensity, because we know football is a very physical sport. You can't be out there just lollygagging. You can't be out there not hustling, not going as hard as you can. You need that fire, you need that intensity, and you need as many of those guys on one NFL team as you can that know how to do it just a smart way at the same time. So that's good. That's going to be something, again, just adding into what Mike Zimmer is going to be able to bring to this defense, because you're looking at some of the other guys. I'm going to say yesterday had a nice interception, I believe, off Cooper Rush, Wanye Thomas, again, from the safety position. There's going to be so much opened up up, especially for this secondary, especially the safeties, because Mike Zimmer always gets a lot out of his safety. So that's going to be something that we can, I say, going into the regular season, we're going to be able to say that that's going to be a very, I guess you want to say, one of the biggest improvements that you're going to see with Mike Zimmer now being the defensive play caller for this team and the coordinator. But also, you're talking about some other guys in the linebacker position. You've seen Damone Clark, which I talked about a little bit yesterday. I said now having a guy like Eric Kendricks in the fold, and you see Eric Kendricks with an interception yesterday, I believe, but now you're talking about Eric Kendricks back in the fold. He's going to be more of that veteran presence. So now you're not having to ask a guy like Damone Clark to be out there thinking too much. Just let him use that athleticism. And today he had a nice day. You saw some nice pops. He's out there running around the field and just making plays. Also, a guy like Jordan Lewis, who I talk about a lot, I feel like he's one of those under the radar, slept on, inside slot interior corners in the NFL. And sometimes he doesn't really get that name because I guess you want to say that credit because the name is not the biggest in the league. But again, he's very important to the Cowboys and what we get done, knowing that you have a Deron Bland and a Trayvon Diggs who will be back soon because he is off that PUP list, which is going to be big, and that's great going forward because that's the first step that you need going forward to getting him back out there and just being comfortable. But when you know what you have on the outside and those two all-pro level guys, barring any more unforeseen things happening, you're going to say Jordan Lewis can be in there and be that interior corner that we're going to need because, again, he consistently makes plays, and I feel like it doesn't get talked about. So he deserves his flowers, and hopefully he's able to just continue to keep it rolling and keep it going. So, and also one of those other guys that the Cowboys brought in, linebacker help, I guess you want to say kind of looked at as a depth piece maybe, but a Willie Harvey Jr. Now you're talking about a guy, I believe today, with an interception on Trey Lance, and then Marquise Bell, who obviously we do know the up and down. Now he's faithfully moved back to more so of a safety role, and you're looking at Marquise Bell gets an interception off Trey Lance today. So Trey Lance is still up in the air. He's kind of going through the motions. At the same time, he's getting more opportunity. The coaching staff is trying to throw a little bit more at him to see exactly what he has to his game. But you're starting to see the offense, to me, is not fully opened up, and you can tell Trey Lance is still kind of playing, I guess, at a slower pace sometimes, and that means even in his processing. And I'm going to say one thing that you're going to say is when you're watching a Dak Prescott, it makes it very visible the things that Trey Lance does need to get better at. So it's just going to be something to keep an eye on, but it's very exciting, again, just to see the linebackers and some of these defensive pieces that are starting to make some plays for this team. And I feel like because if we're able to hang our hat on the defense and not absolutely just need the offense to come out there and score 30 points a game, then we're going to be very dangerous because you obviously know the postseason is the most important for the Cowboys. You can have the best regular season, but to still be a substantial and a solid team overall, you don't want to have to rely all on defense. You don't want to have to rely all on offense. If you can have some very good forces on both sides of the ball, that's what's going to make you a complete team and hopefully a contending team. So the Cowboys just adding in these defensive pieces is going to be something for the Cowboys to, I guess you want to say, just again, hang their hat on, because you know one thing, Mike Zimmer is definitely going to get out of these players. They're going to play hard. The Cowboys offensive line still is a work in progress, but we saw a guy like Tyler Guyton yesterday have a very nice day, the first day in pads. But also at the same time, I also want to say, let's hold our fort down and just keep the temperament at a certain base, I guess you want to say solid level, because at the end of the day, he's still a young guy. This is a rookie. So he's going to have his great days. He's going to have some down days, but it's all a work in progress that's going to help him learn and help him continue to get better. But again, that's going to be a guy, I'm going to say hopefully by week 1, I think Tyler Guyton should be your starting left tackle, because Chuma Edoga, he's an NFL player. I'll give him credit for that. But at the end of the day, that's not a guy you want to go out there saying this is our starting left tackle. Even if it's more of a development type role and waiting around for a guy like Tyler Guyton, I don't want to waste too many weeks, because we know in the NFL, but especially the NFC East, you have a very proud franchise in a team like the Philadelphia Eagles. You have the Giants. You never know what they can be. You have the Washington Commanders now with the new quarterback. We're talking about the Heisman winning quarterback, Jaden Daniels, out of LSU. So now you're going to be looking and saying these are all some teams that you might have to have, I guess you want to say, everything rolling, and you don't want to waste any games and waste any weeks by not having at least a solid product over all around out there. So I'm going to say right now we're looking at Tyler Guyton, and I believe he should possibly, if he can just stay on the path that he is, he should be your starting left tackle when week 1 finally rolls around. But also looking at the interior, you know, Zach Martin, this is going to be a player that's going to be your staple. You're talking about Tyler Smith, an all-pro now at left guard. You're also talking about Terrence Steele. Hopefully we can just get some consistency from him. But the center position, that's always been talked about, because the Cowboys bring in a guy, Cooper Beebe, out of Kansas State in this past draft, and a guy that a lot of people, especially talking about the draft experts in quotation, the experts, they pretty much, they're high on that guy. They're high on that pick. And I feel like he's a mauler, and he continues to work on his game. You can see just the way that his I guess you want to say his work ethic displays itself. But also Brock Hoffman is not giving up that center job easily. The coaching staff pretty much just saying how proud they are of how hard he's working as well. So if we can just continue to stay balanced and just keep guys ready, because at the same time, obviously you can never have too much competition. You always want guys to feel a little fire behind them, because that's what is going to continue to help you get better and better and better. Because when you're talking about the center position, the interior of an offensive line, that's the number one thing. The last thing a quarterback wants is pressure right up the middle. From the center, the left guard, the right guard. You want to lock down that interior, especially obviously the outside as well, but especially on that interior. So if Brock Hoffman does hold off a guy like Cooper Beebe, that's not going to be anything to complain about, because I'm going to say at the end of the day, to me, all that will mean is Brock Hoffman came out there and worked hard and earned that starting job. So we'll see how that goes. But at the same time, on the flip side, you have a guy in Mazi Smith who is now starting to show up and make plays. And I'm talking about make plays. This is still early on, so again, we're talking about, as Cowboys fans, just something to kind of stay aware of and keep your eyes on. A guy like Mazi Smith coming out of camp right now is that he's just better off the ball. He's actually still been able to hold on that weight, because now we're talking about a guy like Dan Quinn, again, made him drop a little bit of weight, but Mike Zimmer, this defensive coaching staff, wanted him to put that weight back on and put on and keep that muscle and that strength. And now you're starting to see his get off is a little even quicker. And to me, that is what's going to open up so much. You saw some plays today in camp. A guy like Mazi Smith, he was pretty much just wrecking some of the run game plays, because again, once he starts to break down that interior, Mazi Smith is a people eater. He can take on 2 men at one time, and that's going to open up so much more for some of the other weapons and pieces that we have on this defense, especially at the linebacker position now. So it's exciting. And if Mazi Smith can just stay on the path that he is as well, we can continue to say that guys need to stay on the path that they're going, because you just want to continue to get better. As camp goes, that doesn't mean you're going to have perfect days every day, but you want to continue to get better. You want to continue to add to your game. And we obviously know the veteran leadership that you're having with some of these other guys now. You're looking and saying a guy like Mazi Smith, if he can actually get rolling and add him into what we have with an Osa Odigizua, the Cowboys are going to be something to keep an eye on when it comes to just an underrated front seven. You know what Micah Parsons is. You know what a guy, I believe Mike McCarthy said today, that pretty much a guy like DeMarcus Lawrence, he's a bowling ball full of butcher knives. Bowling ball of butcher knives, whatever that means. I take it in the mindset of that just means a guy that's going to be coming at you and you never know. It's always going to be dangerous. He's always looking to just wreck something. So I'm going to say DeMarcus Lawrence, we know that veteran presence that he is. And Micah Parsons starting to take on that leadership role a little bit more. If you get some of these young guys, again, like a Mazi Smith, just working that interior, adding to what an Osa Odigizua started to grow into last season, the Cowboys, again, can have an underrated front seven when it comes to that interior, because you do know what your pass rushers are. But when you get some of those stronger guys on the interior, the Cowboys are going to have some things opened up for that linebacker group. When you're talking about a Maurice LaFau and a DeMarvion Overshown, Damone Clark, and Eric Kendricks at a certain point, but then just throwing in some of these other pieces, the Cowboys are going to be able to kind of play around with some of their weapons a little bit more. As training camp will continue on and continue to roll, obviously we're talking about still that top 100 for the NFL list for the Dallas Cowboys. It's all opinion basis for the peers, the players around the league, throwing in their opinions on who they believe some of the most respectable players in this league are. And you look at the Cowboys right now, we have top 5. I think we have in the top 55. I believe the Cowboys have 5 players. I think Zach Martin is the lowest at 53, Deron Bland at 31. I believe Micah Parsons is 17, Dak Prescott is 16, and you have CeeDee Lamb at 13. So the respect that some of these players have on this team, it just speaks throughout the entire league, and some of the other guys, their peers, have also shown and taken some notice. So the Cowboys are they're full of talent. Let's start there at the end of the day. The Cowboys are full of talent. It's about putting it together, having the right coaching staff to help bring it out of the players, and the players actually showing up and making plays when the games get big and the lights get very bright, especially we're talking about the postseason. I don't care if it's a divisional round, wild card round, whatever it is, the Cowboys have got to start showing up, because this team is full of talent and we're adding talent. So I'm never going to be in the mix of saying, if you don't have this guy, we're losing. No, Cowboys are full of talent. Now, can you actually go out there and just make plays when the time calls for it? that's what's going to be the number one thing we're going to have to keep an eye on. But the Cowboys, again, training camp will continue to roll on. Again, padded practice, so now you're starting to see more physicality. You're starting to see some guys get a little banged up. But at the end of the day, to me, that's going to just make this team better in the long run. So I appreciate you guys for all the support. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share. I just want to know what you guys think about the team in general down below. Who are some of the guys that you've been keeping your eyes on? Who are you most excited about? And talk about some of the under the radar and players on this roster right now. Who do you hopefully makes the final 53-man roster for the regular season? Let me know down below in the comment section. I appreciate you guys, and as always, enjoy the rest of your day.